only drank our own wine. Like maybe,
Never.
Zero.
Maybe once.
Yeah.
Promiscuous drinking. I lived in Sonoma, the town of Sonoma, for about 8 years. And I'm going to qualify this up front by saying it's a beautiful town and there are some really amazing people there. However, it's just not my scene.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
It's because the tourists. Always blame it on the tourists.
No, it's not the tourists. Well, that does actually make a difference. The tourists kind of annoy me. But it's a different, like, where do you guys live? Santa Rosa?
Santa Rosa.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know much about Santa Rosa, but Petaluma versus Sonoma, it's just a different vibe. And in Sonoma, they're kind of remind me similar to what you were talking about. Like their labels, they're older brands as well, right?
Sure. Legacy type stuff.
Yeah. And I think there's actually some new blood starting to come in, but generally speaking, I feel like there's like, it's just hard. I feel like I'm sludging through the mud when I'm there because of that. I don't know. I guess I shouldn't.
Well, a lot of wine brands have, and they did it on purpose. They pigeonholed themselves.
Yeah.
So they started off just talking about the dirt and the dirt making them special, and then maybe they got a high.
Your neighbors got dirt too.
Yeah,
buddy.
and then they got
better.
Oh, my grandpa started this. Okay, well, maybe your grandpa started a shitty winery. I'm not saying they did, but maybe they did. Just because it's your grandfather doesn't mean it's good.
Right.
And then the other thing they started doing is like with this luxury, like, oh, it's wine, it's high end, and so you start to pigeonhole yourself in like the lifestyle pretty quickly. Right. And so I think that wine was doing that for so long, and not everybody's doing it now, but it still has that like lingering kind of aesthetic and tone, which Sonoma still has a lot of that, unfortunately.
Yeah, I kind of feel like I'm just not good enough for Sonoma.
And you should never feel that way. You should never
feel that way.
No.
I do. Don't tell me how I should feel.
That's
You're
true.
my real mom. Yeah.
You need to get closer to the microphone.
Hello.
Little brother.
Yeah.
And
also, I'm a strong
brother.
mumbler too, so it's a horrible combination.
What does that mean?
It's an oxymoron.
Strong mumbler.
Mumbler.
Yeah, I can mumble very loud. But a lot of people think I think my whole life everybody thought I was stoned the whole time because I'm usually pretty relaxed. But then also I slur even when I'm not drinking. I just kind of like round out my sentences with a.
And then he gets annoyed that you don't know what the hell he's talking
Yeah,
about.
Right.
Well, I'm trying to communicate.
You guys. Okay, so here's how I discovered you guys. Danny O, who, I mean, in all of the people that I know, he's like, if he's in top 5, maybe top 3. I love him so much. And we haven't known each other that long. I think we've known each other probably for about a year. We actually met way before that when I was, I don't know if you heard this story. I was having a lot of first dates.
Oh, you met at this bar.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you hear this story?
Yeah, I listened to the podcast.
I would go and I would always show up early. And I would get a drink at the bar first, and Danny was the bartender. And so he wasn't mean, but he wasn't overly friendly. Sure. So anyway, I would go and I would have a date, like somebody would meet me there and then I would leave and then I would come back. I don't have that many dates, but I would come back and it would be something different. Someone different.
Someone different.
I haven't slept with that many men.
So I really had a great time dating.
So I, at one point, was kind of like, I think he's going to wonder, like,
escort.
Escort. Yeah, who's going to be? Anyway, that's how we met. But then later I had gone, he was doing an event over at Whisper Sisters. Oh, poor Whisper Sisters.
They used to call me that in prison.
Whisper Sister. And
I thought with it was a Puddle of Mud.
Yeah, it's that deal. That was on Thursday.
Never mind, my story sucks.
No, it's not. No. Well,
anyway, Danny. Let's go back to Danny.
Like
we have the attention span of squirrels. Sorry.
And then we just think we're so fucking funny.
How do you know Danny?
So we used to bartend. So I lived in London for a year. When I came back, I was 20 years old.
It's the second time you've told us you lived in England.
Yeah,
I know. He's very proud of it.
I peaked early. So when I came back, I was 20 and I wanted to work on the bar, but they're like, hey, you're 20, you can't. And so I said, okay, cool. I'll just be a busboy until I can get put on the bar. And so I wound up working with Danny once I got put on the bar. And, and that was kind of it. And we just kind of got along. And he's like, you always crack a joke and you do your job, and that's that. And
anyone that's been in the social scene, the bar scene in Sonoma County has ran into Danny at some point.
Oh,
yeah, he's been doing it for a while.
He's kind of a little bit of a legend around here.
But the funny thing about Dan is when you get to know him, he's just a gooey little teddy bear inside.
I know.
But everybody thinks I'm an asshole when they first meet me. They're like,
no, they don't. Really?
I almost didn't.
Everyone.
Really?
Yeah. People. Well, I'm just kind of sharp, especially I have my brother here to help round it out. Or I'm trying to be extra nice because
you're on
the internet.
I'm going on the interwebs.
I know big words and people like me. But I went on this trip to Portugal with A-MAZ-ING. It's a cork company, and they said we almost didn't bring you because we thought you were such an introvert.
Who says that, by the way?
Wait, an introvert?
A lot of booze.
Have they met you?
Well, I think it was just because the contrast was so big. They thought I was introvert because my emails I'm busy. Aaron's busy, so we're concise and we shoot emails that are short. And I'm not like, hey, super duper, can't wait to establish a relationship with you so I can buy corks or whatever.
Right.
But then I wind up ultimately when I meet him in person, develop a relationship.
You win him over.
But they didn't want to bring me on this trip with all these other winemakers because they thought I was going to be too harsh. Well, I'm an asshole. Don't fight that in any way, shape, or form. But I'm also really fucking fun.
You kind of look like you're
when
fun.
you get a couple drinks in me, I get pretty fun.
Oh, good. Have one more.
But then
Brothers.
I think it was the next year that they brought you, and they're like, "What?" The Inman family was represented very strong in Portugal because
we almost ran for the Presidente of Portugal.
Oh, I want to go to Portugal. That's the place I've never been.
Yeah, highly recommend. That was pretty amazing.
Lisbon.
And so, how long, Aaron, have you been married?
This will be 10 years this November.
I love how you knew the answer. I was testing you.
Yep.
She's listening. I called her earlier. I was like, I'm going to ask.
He's a good family man.
Most of the time, yeah. I mean, I'm still a human being, so occasionally there's all mistakes in my. But at the end of the day, yeah. I mean, I try to pull my weight.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny because when I had my kid earlier, it was kind of I guess that's where babies come from.
Oh, oops.
Kind of, yeah. And then he's much more organized than I am for the most part.
Did you have it planned out? You're like, I'm going to get married when I'm this age, and then I'm going to have a baby when I'm this age.
You know what's funny for a guy that will walk into a tattoo shop and say, "Well, what are you drawing there? I'll get that."
Yeah.
I knew when
you did that.
Oh yeah, I've got like 6 or 7 of those. I knew I wanted to wait to get married till I was a little bit older, so we didn't get married till I was like 27, 28. And then I knew I didn't want to have kids until we'd already. I didn't want to have kids until we'd already like been married for a while and done some stuff, and that's exactly what happened. So I mean, I have planned things out, and that.
Are you a list maker?
Yeah, but I think it's because I'm a total ADD guy too. So I know if I don't make lists, then a lot of times.
He time blocks for a week at a time, and then the time blocking goes away, and he goes, fuck, I need time block. And then again.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of like self-betterment, like always trying to be, compare yourself to who you were yesterday, but then it gets, frustrating too, because you're like, oh, I'm actually not making as much progress as I thought I was going to.
It's funny. I think I'm kind of dancing a line. For many, many years, I was the person. I had my life planned out. The lists and everything is organized, and it was a lifetime of disappointment because basically the expectations have always been so high, and life just happens. So if you're not at least like, with your knees a little bit bent and a little bit loose,
be
then
flexible and you won't get bent out of shape.
Totally. And I wasn't very flexible.
Yeah. And now I don't disagree with you that you do create your own expectations, and that can be a real problem. And I will say also being self-employed, and we've been self-employed 100% for 10 years as young guys, that you don't see that a lot. I guess I consider myself young. I'm 38.
And very handsome, if I may say so myself.
Thank you, sir. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, kind of like the facial hair today. Whatever it was yesterday, I'm not sure.
This is the lazy version. But that's... anyways, that can be, when you're self-employed, you got to be good at a lot of things, or a proficient.
Right.
Average at best.
And we're both pretty stoic, and we don't give a lot of compliments to each other, so that can be tough in a work environment. Like, you did it for. I said, I think 2 days ago I came into his office and I gave him some version of a compliment. I said, "That's the closest thing to a compliment I'll be able to give you today." He was like, "I'll take it."
And I said, "Can you kindly get the shit out of here?"
Yeah.
I'm time blocking.
Way to bring it back.
Entrepreneurship, it's a thing, right? It's I think about. Here's where I get frustrated. I really want to dive deep into things. Like I want to do an exceptional job. I want to do great at everything. And I mean, I think that's kind of our nature, right? But when you're in that self-employed entrepreneur area, where you haven't hit it big yet. So you don't have all of the assistants and all of the teams. And it's frustrating because it seems like you're always scratching the surface in what you do. Like you're kind of like juggling all the balls, and it's like, oh, I'm just going to do this as much as I can get to.
But let me round that out a little bit.
Thing.
The more surfaces you scratch, the more you have power of deduction to pull from all these other little things that you've done.
Right.
Like, I don't know. I'm not good at fucking anything, but I'm kind of good at lots of stuff.
No, I work with them. It's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, you know, I can pull from all these things that I've done over the years. And been I know this. I know a little bit of math. I know a little bit of science. I know a little bit of this. And
but it's not about the ability. It's about like knowing that you could have done more, but you didn't because you had this other thing that you have to do like a little bit on all the things.
Because we were at a hand sanitizer and I had to go buy it. So now I can't solve this physics problem.
Did you, I think you had that, it was a book you read or something, they call it pancaking. You know, it's like, it's a very thin
Yes, that's it. Exactly. I want to know about the book. I've been reading a lot of books during.
Yeah. I have a similar, you know, perspective on that as you do. Like, I do get annoyed. I probably would have been a great person to go get a PhD because PhDs know a lot about a little.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Micro versus macro.
Yeah. And I'm in the total opposite environment where I just am not allowed to. People do that all the time in wine too. It's amazing. And it's understandable because wine's kind of created that. Oh, this guy obviously grows the grapes and also ferments and then also bottles it and then also, you know, creates the marketing plan and then collects the money. And it's like, no,
bullshit.
Nobody does that, you know, but there's this kind of idea that but that's essentially why you pancake out when you're a small wine owner or any business owner.
And you work in the business, not on the business.
Yeah.
Right?
And I'm constantly making the analogy of like for vineyards and the winery, like when you go into the hospital, is your anesthesiologist also your surgeon? And they're like, well, no. Right. And I'm like, well, the guy growing the grapes isn't always necessarily the guy fermenting the grapes. Right. And it's kind of different. And it's not that you don't have a way larger understanding of what that vineyard manager is doing than your average person, but you can't do the deep dive that you're talking about.
And even if they do, it's not scalable, right?
Totally. And you look at most big wineries, not only is there a vineyard manager, there's also a viticulture. I'm in the business and I cannot say the word.
Viticultural.
A viticulturist. And, you know, they're the ones that's like informing them on the certain treatments and disease and blah, blah, blah. And then you get it to the winery and you let those guys take over. And so it's a really interesting, like, I would love to, you know, just sit around and Jesse and I like to geek out on, you know, yeast and different kinds of fermentation.
Which looking at it, people don't think. They're like, oh, this guy likes...
Also, are you guys hoarding yeast during shelter in place? Because
different apparently kind of under my armpits, maybe.
There's apparently a lot of people looking for that.
Yeah, it's for sourdough yeast.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. I learned a little bit about it yesterday.
So anyways, I'll just end it there. But that's the nature of small business. And in wine, especially, I feel like because it's, you know, you're potentially growing something, manufacturing something, selling something, it's just you pancake out even harder.
How do you... So I'm kind of gathering what your model is, right? But how do you market? Is it all word of mouth?
I suck at it, first of all. Let's just go there.
Oh, let's all be
this is a pretty sweet basement we're in right now.
I know. It is nice. Most of the members that we have found us either by walk-bys or word of mouth. When we opened, it was that exact story. I was like chief cook and bottle washer, and I did have an assistant, but I will be honest, I underestimated the level of effort it was going to take to get people to become aware that we were here.
People are going to want to hang out with me for sure. Right?
I know. And also the funny thing is I think I was living in a little bit of a bubble in the awareness of this in the co-working industry in general. And it was such an obvious thing for me. And it's still an obvious answer to the community that we're in. What wasn't clear to me is how few people in Petaluma actually knew that this was a thing.
Sure.
So it was just you have to educate the community, right? And so generally Petaluma, it's a very unique community and it's very, familial kind of feeling, very community focused. And I knew that, which is why I wanted to do it here. But it wasn't going to be something that you can't throw money at like advertising in Sonoma media, not right away. Right. it's like it's boots on the ground kind of marketing that was needed for this. And
like
so
guerrilla marketing, you might say.
Yeah, totally. And I wasn't in that mindset because that was, and of course that requires my time. And at that point, I was like, yeah, I was like, I'm still trying to figure out how to do events. So basically when I opened, I was like, oh, and I have this entire like beautiful 1,700 square